The topic of rice plants is included as a part or a subtopic of the chapter cellular respiration. Why? Because when we teach students about aerobic and anaerobic respiration, and then we also talk about different situations in which the plants and animals might anaerobically respire. So one of the examples is that of rice plants. And why in particular rice plants? Because basically rice is a plant which can grow in paddy fields having a lot of water. Although rice can be grown in relatively drier fields also, but since it grows fast in the water flooded fields, and since the other varieties of plant, they don't grow so fast, like for example the weeds and all, so that's why there's less competition for the rice plant, and that enables the farmers to get a better yield. ठीक है, ज़्यादा quantity में rice produce होता है. That's a good thing, but one of the disadvantages is that when rice is grown in fields which are completely water flooded, so always remember, Abdullah, that the solubility of oxygen and carbon dioxide in water is much less as compared to the air. Yesterday only, when we were talking about that experiment on spirometer, or a question tha last, the last question was this one, in which the examiner was asking a question that why would the student not get the same result, although this equation shows you that there are equal numbers of molecules of oxygen and equal numbers of molecules of carbon dioxide on both sides. And the reason was that in the real world scenario, the photosynthesis is happening in which these two gases are moving into and out of the plant through the medium of air. Whereas in this experimental setup, we were using sodium hydrogen carbonate solution. So the same thing in case of rice plants. The rice plants can grow very well in water flooded or paddy fields because the yield is more. And why? Because there is less competition, because the weeds and the other plants cannot grow in water flooded environments. So ab kya hoga? The problem that these plants will face will be that they will have less available soluble oxygen for themselves, okay, for aerobic respiration, and also less carbon dioxide available for photosynthesis. So we know that plants can photosynthesize also and they can respire also. तो ये दोनों जो processes है ना वो compromise हो जाएंगे. But then of course every plant or every animal, every human being, if it's put in a difficult situation, he tries to adapt to it. So similarly, the rice plants also adapt to this situation. And there are many adaptations. So ये सारी adaptations exam में पूछते हैं. One of the adaptations is that they grow extremely tall, right? Since they're growing tall, so जो उनके जो leaves हैं ना, they are well above the level of the water, and then they get a chance to receive sunlight and sort of photosynthesize and have no problem as far as the entry of CO2 into the plant is concerned. Secondly, the stem and the roots, जो कि submerged हैं water में, they are specialized structurally in such a manner that they have large air spaces. When we look at them through the light microscope, they have large air spaces known as parenchyma. So those air spaces allow faster diffusion of gases, ठीक है, ताकि जो है वो ऑक्सीजन भी मिल जाए हर सेल को and carbon dioxide भी मिल जाए. Thirdly, the adaptation is that besides all these adaptations, if still the rice plants have less oxygen, then they have the option of respiring anaerobically, and they do so by the alcohol fermentation wala pathway, right? Which हमने कल किया था yeast में, lactate pathway नहीं, alcohol wala. But somehow the rice plants are structured in such a manner that their level of tolerance for the buildup of ethanol is much more as compared to any other plant or any other tissue. So they can tolerate high concentrations of ethanol. And besides that, इनके पास एक और एंजाइम है जिसका नाम है ethanol dehydrogenase, not alcohol dehydrogenase. Alcohol dehydrogenase तो ethanol को ethanol में convert करता था, but ethanol dehydrogenase can actually break down that ethanol into simpler compounds, and so the rice plants would be not exposed to too much toxicity by the buildup of ethanol. Gee. Okay, so one by one we can see that there are all these different adaptations have been provided so that the rice can grow in a condition in which there is less available oxygen and less available carbon dioxide. ठीक है? अच्छा, और this is a mark scheme from the year 2017, paper 4.1, jisme it was an essay question and they had asked about what are the, how is rice adapted to respire anaerobically or whatever. So you can see it, all those points have been mentioned. Parenchyma in the stem and the roots. What will they do? They will help the gases to move in and out. Shallow roots, shallow ka matlab they're not that deep, so they are more close to the surface of the water, surface of the air. तो फिर इसलिए जो है oxygen can easily diffuse from the air. Air film is trapped on the underwater leaves. जो leaves water के अंदर grow हो रहे हैं उसके अंदर a film of the air is trapped. ठीक है? Fast internodal growth. Fast internodal growth, वैसे ये point जरूरी नहीं है कि पता हो, but I'll just tell you what it means. For example, this is a plant, right? So these are all nodes. ठीक है? ये nodes हैं. These ones, I'll just make the nodes. ठीक है, हर एक नोड पे एक लीफ निकलता है ना, तो in such a plant the distance between these two nodes is known as the internodal distance, right? So the rice plants specifically, then their growth of this internodal distance is very fast. मतलब कहने का ये है कि जल्दी जल्दी grow करते हैं, right? This is what they mean. And I will not explain you this point because this will only be understood when we are, that's why I've written ignore this point for the time being when we do that chapter. ठीक है? Achha. Then after having achieved all this, still if they have unavailable oxygen, then they will respire anaerobically. और they are दो चीजें आपको बतानी है कि क्यों ये बड़ी देर तक anaerobically respire कर सकते हैं. There are two reasons. Okay, reason number one is that they can tolerate high levels of ethanol. Number one. Reason number two is that besides that, they have the enzyme ethanol dehydrogenase. Up, just clear your confusions, okay, so that you don't write down wrong things in exams. This is how you will remember. Okay, so here is the enzyme alcohol dehydrogenase, this one, which changes ethanol to ethanol. And then we have the enzyme ethanol dehydrogenase. वो क्या करता है? Ethanol dehydrogenase will break down ethanol into simpler compounds, and those simple compounds, your textbook does not give you the name, so just you can remember it as कि ये एक enzyme है ethanol dehydrogenase which can break down ethanol into simpler compounds, which is why rice plants can tolerate anaerobic respiration for a longer time. और ये enzyme सिर्फ rice plant के पास ही है, right? So this is it. I hope this is understood.
Welcome, miss. Understood.
Yes, Abdullah.
Understood.
Achha, and now we are done with this chapter. So there are two things. The first point is that now it's your job to go through all the details of this chapter.
Everything
So that so maybe one day I can take a short quiz of this on this chapter, or maybe I'll share the quiz on the classroom and you can solve it yourself and tell me how far you know, where do you stand as far as the concepts of this chapter are concerned. And now we begin with the new unit, which is photosynthesis, right? And today is the 12th of November. So this was a time period that we actually needed to finish one complete unit. So if we are going with this pace, we will be able to finish the syllabus. So the new topic, which is photosynthesis.
When will we be able to finish the syllabus, by the way, miss?
Just a minute. The name tells you that this is a process. Okay, synthesis, it's a process in which something is being synthesized in the presence of photo, which means light, right? So in the presence of light, food is being synthesized. And since plants are the only organisms on earth which have a food synthesizing material, which is chlorophyll, so they can do it. Okay? They can use atoms like carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen and sort of assemble them together to make organic compounds like glucose. We can't do it. We have lots of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen atoms inside our body, but our body does not have the provision to join them together. चाहे कितने भी हमारे पास atoms, molecules हो, but we can't make food, which is why plants are known as producers and we are consumers, right? अच्छा, when we begin photosynthesis, we have to be clear about some concepts which are, let's see, every human being needs energy, ठीक है, to carry out its bodily functions. And energy जो organisms हासिल करते हैं ना, they obtain it in two forms, either chemical energy or light energy. In other words, I can say जो मैंने ऊपर जो classification बनाई है ना, I have actually classified organisms on the basis of whether they get the energy for themselves in a chemical form or in a light form. समझ आ रही है बात? ठीक है? For example, हमको, we human beings, when we need energy, in order to make energy, in other words, in order to make ATP, we need something in a chemical form. हमें chemical form में वो compound चाहिए, which is of course ये है आपका glucose है, right? And then plants need it in the form of light. फिर ही जाके, they'll be using light energy to get energy for themselves. इसका मतलब ये है, we'll be using chemical energy to get energy for our cells. ठीक है? अच्छा, इसके लिए there are terminologies in biology which are, इस terminology को समझने से पहले you should know the literal meaning of the word troph. So troph actually means nutrition. ठीक है? Nutrition. So if I say plants are phototrophs, it means the plants are getting nutrition for themselves through light. I am a chemotroph. I am getting nutrition for my body or for my energy requirements from chemicals, chemo, right? So we are chemotrophs and plants are phototrophs. ठीक है? If this much is understood, then we go a little bit higher. हमने पीछे क्या किया? Over here, we were classifying organisms on the basis of what kind of energy they use to live. ठीक है? What form of energy? ये जो आपका second जो है ना, इसमें हम classify कर रहे हैं organisms को. This is another way by means of which we can classify organism, and this is on the basis of the source of carbon. जैसे कि मुझे जो है, जो source of carbon चाहिए ना, वो organic चाहिए. For me, if I get carbon in an elemental form like this, carbon atom, it's of no use to me. If I get carbon in this form, also it is of no use to me. ठीक है? The only way by means of which carbon is useful to me is in the form of an organic compound. So all those organisms which are dependent on an organic source of carbon are known as heterotrophs. Heterotrophs. Hetero का मतलब organic, troph का मतलब nutrition. ठीक है? On the contrary, there are other organisms जैसे कि plants. सबसे ज़्यादा plants ही हैं. I'll just write down over here animals and humans. ठीक है? यहाँ पे example है animals and humans. And over here the example is that of plants. तो plants जो है ना, if we give them CO2, अगर हम उनको CO2 दे दें as a source of carbon dioxide, they can easily convert that CO2 into C6H12O6. है या नहीं?
Sorry, miss, है या नहीं क्या आपके?
I'll repeat once again. देखो, the slide which is visible to you is showing you how organisms can be classified based on the source of carbon that they need for their life. हम सबको कार्बन चाहिए, राइट? हम कार्बन के बगैर जिंदा नहीं रह सकते, लेकिन we want carbon in an organic form. We से मतलब क्या? Animals and humans, which is why we are known as heterotrophs. ठीक है? अच्छा. On the contrary, plants need carbon in the inorganic form. और inorganic form कौन सा है? CO2. All those organisms which are dependent on an inorganic source of carbon are known as autotrophs. And the example is plants. We are not autotrophs. In fact, हमारे अलावा even fungi are heterotrophs. Fungi भी बिल्कुल हमारी तरह ही हैं. Fungi, all animals and humans, they are heterotrophs. Plants are autotrophs. तो अब ये चीज समझ आ गई? हेटेरोट्रोफ, ऑटोट्रोफ, कीमोट्रोफ एंड फोटोट्रोफ.
समझ आ गया बस.
समझ आ गया? अच्छा. So now I'll be joining both of these concepts together over here. यहाँ पे थोड़ी सी हमने क्या किया, मर्ज कर दिया इन सब चीजों को, कीमो, हेट्रो, ऑटो, सबको. एंड अगेन दिस स्लाइड इज इन फ्रंट ऑफ यू, इसको पहले खुद से स्टडी करो एंड देन यू कैन आस्क मी क्वेश्चंस एंड आई विल सॉल्व योर क्वेरीज.
Miss,
We did cellular respiration, ठीक है, and now we are moving on to photosynthesis. So we have to know a connection between these two classes of organisms. Basically, बड़े simple words में मैं आपको ये कह सकती हूँ कि these are plants, and imagine this is us, right? There is a very deep connection between the plants and us. Why? Because the plants, they are photoautotrophs. कैसे? The plants are using photo, which means light, to make their own food. Auto means automatically, खुद से खुद बना रहे हैं food, ठीक है. ऑटो का मतलब ये है कि ये इनऑर्गेनिक ले रहे हैं कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड और फूड बना रहे हैं. ट्रोफ का मतलब खाना, फूड, राइट. सो यूजिंग लाइट, मेकिंग देयर ओन फूड विच इज प्लांट, ठीक है. और ये जब बना लेते हैं, whom are they going to serve? They're going to serve us. So what are we? We are using carbon in the chemical form, light के form में नहीं. We are hetero, meaning कि हम ऑर्गेनिक सोर्स ऑफ कार्बन पे डिपेंडेंट है. हम इनऑर्गेनिक, हमारा कोई काम नहीं आ सकता चाहे कितना भी हम कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड इनहेल कर लें. एंड वी आर मेकिंग फूड, राइट. So basically the logic behind teaching this concept to students is that they should understand that there is a communication, there is a connection between photoautotrophs and chemoheterotrophs, ठीक है. Chemoheterotrophs हम हैं. We need C6H12O6. Who will provide us?
yeah,
Plants will provide
plants.
us, ठीक है. प्लांट्स कैसे करेंगे? लाइट यूज करेंगे, फोटो यूज करेंगे, इनऑर्गेनिक कार्बन यूज करेंगे, CO2, फोटोसिंथेसिस करेंगे, खाना बनाएंगे, ठीक है. और अपनी ATP भी बनाएंगे, वो हम सब करेंगे फोटोसिंथेसिस में. एंड देन once they are done with this, we eat plants, ठीक है ना. we also eat plants and we even eat animals who eat plants. तो इसलिए हर तरह से जो है ना, वो we are dependent. In other words, chemoheterotrophs are dependent on photoautotrophs to get their energy, to function. And in simple words, कौन है chemoheterotrophs? Animals, humans, fungi and most bacteria. Most, यानी जितने भी आपने AS में वो किया ना, प्रोकैरियोट का स्ट्रक्चर किया, सारे बैक्टीरिया जो दुनिया में है ना, they are heterotrophs except for some bacteria. इसलिए यहाँ पे वर्ड some लिखा हुआ है. So मेजॉरिटी यानी मेजर जो चंक है ना इसका फोटोऑटोट्रोफ्स का, वो है प्लांट्स विद सम एल्गी एंड सम फोटोसिंथेटिक बैक्टीरिया. कुछ ऐसे हैं बैक्टीरिया जिनके पास अपने फोटोसिंथेटिक पिगमेंट्स हैं, क्लोरोफिल नहीं है. कुछ एक पिगमेंट्स हैं जो कि कैप्चर कर सकते हैं सनलाइट एंड दे कैन मेक देयर ओन फूड, सो दे आर नोन एज फोटोऑटोट्रोफ्स, ठीक है.